The small coastal town of Belhaven had always been a place of solitude, where the gentle waves lapped against the shore and the salty breeze whispered through the streets. It was a town untouched by the rush of modern life, where time felt as though it slowed to the rhythm of the ocean's tide. And for Sarah, it had been the perfect place to bury herself in books, her only real companions in a life that had been shaped by loss. Sarah loved the library. It was a sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the world couldn't touch her. She'd spent most of her life there, sorting, shelving, organizing, and it was where she felt most at peace. The smell of old paper, the hum of quiet conversations, and the soothing sound of pages turning filled her senses daily. That rainy afternoon, as the storm clouds rolled in thick and heavy, Sarah was in her usual spot by the window, watching the droplets race each other down the glass. The library was quiet, as it always was on a stormy day. The wind howled outside, and the world beyond seemed distant and far away. As Sarah skimmed through another book, the door creaked open, and a gust of wind blew in, sending a chill through the room. Sarah looked up, her eyes locking onto a stranger standing in the doorway. He was drenched, his clothes clinging to his tall frame. A camera bag hung from his shoulder, and his dark, damp hair stuck to his forehead. He was tall, with a strong build, and his eyes, deep and searching, were unlike anyone she had seen in Belhaven before. "Oh, sorry to interrupt," he said with a sheepish smile, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I've just moved here, didn't know if this was open." "It's open," Sarah replied softly, her voice quiet but welcoming. She set her book down, watching him as he took in his surroundings, his gaze lingering on the bookshelves and the dusty old books that filled the air with nostalgia. The stranger hesitated before walking toward her. "I've heard you have the best collection of photography books." I'm a photographer. Thought I'd check it out." Photography. Sarah's heart skipped. She had always been captivated by the art of photography, the way a single moment could be captured and preserved for eternity. "You're a photographer?" He nodded, smiling again, this time with a bit more warmth. "Yeah, I've been trying to find a place to settle, you know. A quiet town, somewhere to take a break from the madness of city life." "Well, you've certainly found the right place," Sarah said, offering a small smile, though her heart fluttered unexpectedly. She was used to the quiet, predictable rhythms of her life, and yet, there was something about him, something unfamiliar, that stirred her in a way she couldn't quite place. "I'm Ethan," he said, offering her his hand. "Ethan Barnes." She hesitated for a moment before shaking his hand. "Sarah," she replied, her voice almost too soft. "Sarah West." They stood there, awkwardly, for a moment. Ethan glanced around, noticing the rows of books, the stacks of untouched tomes waiting for someone to discover their stories. His eyes landed on a shelf near the window, filled with books on photography. "Is it okay if I look around?" he asked, the question almost an afterthought. "Of course," Sarah replied, nodding, though her eyes followed him as he moved toward the shelf. She tried to return to her book, but her mind kept drifting back to him. Why was her heart racing? She was used to people coming and going, but Ethan, there was something about him. The way he carried himself, like someone who had seen too much but still had a quiet strength about him. His presence felt different, almost magnetic. Ethan spent the next half-hour browsing, his fingers running over the spines of the books, occasionally pausing to examine a photograph or flick through a page. Sarah went back to her desk, but she couldn't stop watching him. She noticed the quiet intensity in the way he handled each book, as if they held answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. Finally, he returned to the counter where Sarah was seated, holding a thick, leather-bound book of black and white photography. "Do you mind if I borrow this?" he asked, his eyes meeting hers. "It's beautiful." Her heart skipped again. The look in his eyes, the quiet way he spoke, it made her feel as though she were seeing him for the first time, even though they had just met. There was an understanding between them, something unspoken but undeniable. "Sure," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'll sign you up for a library card." As she wrote down his name, their hands brushed briefly, and for a split second, she felt a spark, something fleeting, but real. Her breath caught in her throat, and she quickly looked away, pretending to focus on the paperwork. She could feel his presence beside her, almost too close. "Thanks," Ethan said, his voice low, the smile in his voice still lingering even as he took his book. "I'll be back tomorrow." He turned to leave, pausing at the door. "I'll see you around, Sarah." Something in his tone made her look up. "I'll see you around, Ethan." The door closed behind him, and Sarah stood there for a long moment, staring at the spot where he had been. What just happened? Her heart still raced, but she couldn't quite understand why. The days passed, and Sarah found herself thinking about Ethan more than she cared to admit. Each time the door of the library creaked open, her heart skipped, but it wasn't him, only the regular patrons. She had learned to guard her heart after the heartbreaks of the past, but somehow, she couldn't quite shake the feeling that something had changed the moment Ethan had walked into her life. Sure enough, just a few days later, he returned. This time, he was wearing a dark jacket and carrying his camera, his eyes scanning the shelves with the same intensity as before. Sarah couldn't help but notice how he seemed to look at everything with an artist's eye, always searching for something beneath the surface. "I finished the book last night," Ethan said as he walked up to the counter, a smile on his face. "It was incredible. I think I'm hooked on photography for life now." Sarah smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad you liked it. It's one of my personal favorites." "So, what about you?" Ethan asked, his tone suddenly more curious. "How did you end up here, in this quiet little town?" The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that before, at least not with genuine interest. She hesitated, unsure of how to answer, then decided to share a little piece of her story. "I grew up in a big city," she started, her voice softer than usual. "But it was always so chaotic. I moved here after I lost someone very important to me. I needed space to breathe. And this place, the library, it just felt like home." Ethan nodded, his expression gentle. "I understand. I've been running away from my past for a while now, trying to outrun the mistakes and the mess." Sarah looked at him, her heart aching for the sadness that still clung to him. She knew that feeling all too well, the need to escape, to forget, to heal. "It's hard, isn't it?" she said quietly. "Trying to outrun everything. But sometimes, no matter where we go, we have to face it eventually." Ethan didn't say anything for a long moment. His gaze was fixed on a photograph on the wall, but Sarah could see the battle inside him. The vulnerability in his eyes was raw, and for the first time, she realized how much he had been hiding behind that charming smile. I think I'm ready to stop running," Ethan said softly, looking back at her. "And I'm glad I found this place." "And you?" Sarah's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words sinking deep into her heart. Was this it? Was this what she had been waiting for? The connection she had hoped to find but had buried for so long. Before she could respond, a loud crash from the back of the library startled them both. Sarah rushed to the sound, only to find a stack of books had fallen off a shelf, scattering across the floor. Ethan moved quickly to help her, and together they began picking up the books. Their hands brushed again, and this time, the contact didn't feel accidental. The spark between them was undeniable, like electricity in the air. When they stood up, their faces were inches apart. Sarah's heart raced in her chest, but she couldn't look away from him. Ethan's eyes were filled with something she couldn't quite name: desire, longing, hope. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I want to be here. With you. I think I've been waiting for you my entire life." Her pulse quickened at his words. Could it be? Was he feeling the same pull, the same deep connection that had begun to grow between them? Before she could answer, a loud knock at the door made them both jump. The moment was broken, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted, something that couldn't be undone. The following days were filled with a strange tension between them. Ethan continued to visit the library every day, and Sarah couldn't help but look forward to their moments together. But neither of them had yet spoken of what had happened, of the kiss that had almost happened, of the feelings they both seemed to be holding back. One evening, after the library closed, Ethan lingered by the door, looking hesitant. Sarah, he said softly, do you ever wonder if we're meant to be more than just this? The question took her by surprise. Meant to be more? She hadn't dared to even think about that. But here he was, asking her the very thing that had been lacking in the back of her mind for days. I don't know, Sarah replied, her voice barely a whisper. I've been afraid to hope for something more. Ethan stepped closer, his hand brushing against hers. The touch was gentle but filled with so much meaning. Sometimes, he said, his voice thick with emotion, we need to take a leap. We can't let fear hold us back. Not this time. And in that moment, Sarah realized that he was right. Fear had kept her in a cage for too long. The love she had buried, the hope she had pushed aside, she had been too afraid to let it in. But now, with Ethan standing before her, his heart laid bare, she felt something awakening inside her. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice trembling. But maybe I'm ready to take that leap with you. Ethan smiled, his eyes shining with tenderness. Then let's do it. Together. And as he took her hand in his, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. They were no longer running from their past. They were ready to face the future, together. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between Sarah and Ethan grew stronger. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing parts of themselves they had never revealed to anyone. But as much as they were healing together, there was still one thing left unsaid, their love. One evening, as the sun set over the ocean, Ethan took Sarah's hand and led her down to the beach. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the waves crashed softly against the shore. Sarah, Ethan said, his voice trembling, I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you. I know we've both been hurt, but what we have, it's real. And I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never imagined this, never thought she would find love again. But standing here, with Ethan, everything felt perfect. I love you too, she whispered, her voice breaking. I never thought I could love again. But you've shown me that it's possible. And I want to be with you, always. They kissed then, their hearts finally free to love without fear, without hesitation. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sarah and Ethan knew that their love was not just a fleeting moment, it was the beginning of something that would last forever. The moral lesson of this story is that true love often begins with vulnerability and healing. Sarah and Ethan's story teaches us that before we can fully embrace love, we must first confront our past, allow ourselves to be seen, and open our hearts to the possibility of connection. Healing is not always a solitary journey. Sometimes, it takes the presence of another to remind us that we're not alone and that love is worth the risk. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more beautiful love stories. Your support means the world and helps me keep sharing moments that matter. See you in my next video.